Welcome back to Slumber Quest, where we wander slowly through big questions of science and history, so you can drift into sleep with a curious mind and a quiet heart. Tonight, we will explore one of humanity's most timeless questions. Could humans ever stop aging? Could there come a day when the wrinkles of time no longer mark our skin, when our organs do not tire, and when the passage of years feels more like a number on paper than a weight on our bodies? Aging is so familiar, so universal, that it is easy to forget just how mysterious it really is. Every cell in your body carries instructions to keep you alive, to repair itself, to keep functioning. And yet, over time, the systems wear down. Joints stiffen, hair turns gray, reaction times slow. To age is to be human. But perhaps it is not a law of nature. It may only be a problem we have not yet solved. In this journey, we will explore how aging works, why it happens, and whether it is possible to slow it down, or even to stop it altogether. We'll look at scientific ideas, from the shortening of telomeres to the strange role of damaged proteins. We'll wander through myths of eternal youth and examine modern research in labs where scientists try to reprogram cells to act young again. Along the way, we'll also ask a gentler question. Even if we could live without aging, what would that mean for our lives, our relationships, and the way we see the world? This will not be a sprint, but a slow walk. Each step, each section, will be like turning over a stone in a quiet forest, discovering what lies beneath and setting it back down. The science can be complex, but we will move through it at a calm and steady pace, with no rush. The goal here is not to solve aging tonight, but to let your mind drift with the wonder of it, until your eyes grow heavy and your breath deepens into sleep. So settle in, get comfortable, let your body rest while your imagination roams. Tonight, we are asking a question as old as humanity. Could we ever stop aging? And as we ask it, may your own body relax into the comfort of this moment, just as it is. When we ask whether humans could ever stop aging, it helps to begin with a simple but slippery question. What is aging in the first place? We all know it when we see it. Wrinkles appear, muscles soften, eyes may not focus as quickly. But beneath the surface, aging is not one single process. It is a tangle of many small changes happening over years in nearly every cell of the body. One of the simplest places to begin is with the cell. Your body is made of trillions of them, each one like a tiny city, full of activity. Cells do not last forever. They divide and renew themselves. Each time they divide, they copy their DNA, which is like the instruction manual for building you. But at the end of each DNA strand sits something called a telomere, a repeating sequence that acts almost like the plastic cap on a shoelace. It protects the DNA from fraying. Over time, however, with each division, the telomere grows shorter. When it becomes too short, the cell can no longer divide. It becomes sluggish, or it shuts down entirely. This is one of the most studied clues to aging, the slow wearing away of those protective caps. But telomeres are only one piece. Inside the cell, tiny power plants called mitochondria provide energy. As the years pass, mitochondria produce not just energy, but also byproducts, small sparks of chemical damage. Over decades, those sparks can accumulate, wearing down proteins, membranes, and DNA itself. Think of it like the slow buildup of rust on a car. The car still runs, but over time, the parts weaken. Another piece of the puzzle is that not all cells die when they stop dividing. Some linger. These are called senescent cells, cells that have stopped being useful but refuse to leave. They sit in tissues like unwelcome guests, releasing signals that stir up inflammation. A few senescent cells may not matter, but as the years add up, their presence can spread, creating a background noise of irritation in the body's systems. There are also changes in the way our body manages proteins. Proteins are the working tools of life. They fold into shapes that let them act like gears, scissors, or locks and keys. But as we age, some proteins fold incorrectly. They clump together. You may have heard of plaques in diseases like Alzheimer's. These are examples of proteins gone wrong, sticking together in ways that harm cells. On top of all this, the immune system shifts with age. When we are young, it is alert and sharp, able to respond quickly to viruses or injuries. With age, the system grows duller, slower, and sometimes confused. It may fail to attack a harmful invader or mistakenly attack the body itself. This gradual weakening makes older bodies more vulnerable. What we call aging, then, is not one single event. It is more like a symphony of small declines. Telomeres shortening, mitochondria faltering, proteins misfolding, cells turning senescent, and the immune system losing its edge. Each by itself is manageable, but together, over years and decades, they create the experience we know so well. And yet, it is important to notice that even in its decline, the body is astonishingly resilient. Many of your cells have been dividing and repairing for decades without failing. Every heartbeat, every breath, is a reminder of how much is still working. Aging may be inevitable so far, but it is not a collapse. It is a gradual shifting of balance between renewal and breakdown. Scientists sometimes describe aging as the accumulation of damage, but another way to think of it is as a gentle drifting. The balance between youth and age is like a candle flame, bright and steady at first, then slowly flickering as the wax burns down. Understanding this foundation is important because every effort to slow or stop aging begins with one of these processes: protecting telomeres, fixing mitochondria, clearing senescent cells, or improving the way proteins fold. Each approach is like tugging on one thread of a very large web. So when we ask, what is aging exactly? The answer is many things at once. A shortening here, a slowing there, a buildup of clutter, a loss of clarity. It is not a single clock, but dozens of clocks ticking together. And this is why the question of whether we could ever stop aging is both fascinating and difficult. To stop one clock may not stop them all. Long before scientists peered into cells and measured telomeres, people told stories about the dream of stopping aging. For as long as we have recorded myths, there have been tales of fountains, elixirs, and hidden realms where time could be paused. These stories remind us that the longing for eternal youth is not new. It is as old as humanity itself. Perhaps the most famous is the Fountain of Youth. Legends of a magical spring that could restore youth appear in cultures from the Middle East to Europe, and later in the Americas. In the early 1500s, the Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de León sailed through the Caribbean, and later stories claimed he was searching for such a fountain in Florida. Whether or not he truly sought it, the myth endured. Water that could wash away age and return a body to youth. It was a symbol of hope and perhaps of desperation. Other traditions spoke of special foods or plants. In Chinese legend, the peaches of immortality grew in the heavenly orchard of the goddess Shi Wangmu. To taste one was to live for centuries. In India, ancient texts described Amrita, the nectar of the gods, churned from the cosmic ocean, said to grant immortality to those who drank it. The Norse told of Idun, a goddess who kept golden apples that gave the gods their youth. Without her fruit, even the mighty Odin and Thor would wither. What these stories have in common is the sense that youth and vitality could be stored in a hidden place, kept in fruit, nectar, water, or even a secret land. They reflect a universal intuition that aging might not be inevitable, that it could be reversed if only we found the right key. But these myths also carried warnings. Eternal youth was often paired with unintended consequences. The Greek tale of Tithonus tells of a mortal man who was granted immortality by the goddess Eos, but she forgot to ask for eternal youth along with it. He lived forever, but continued to age. Eventually, he became so shrunken and frail that he begged for release. In some versions, the gods took pity and turned him into a cicada, a creature that sings endlessly in the summer heat. This story touches on a deeper fear. Even if we could stop aging, would it truly be a blessing? What would it mean to live on, unchanged, while everything around us grew old? These myths often framed eternal youth as both a gift and a curse, raising questions that echo today. In the Middle Ages, European alchemists searched for the philosopher's stone, a substance said to turn lead into gold and grant immortality. They never found it, but their experiments laid groundwork for early chemistry. In a way, the quest for eternal life inspired the birth of modern science. What is striking is that these stories come from nearly every corner of the world. Humans everywhere dreamed of escaping the weight of years. Whether it was an orchard of peaches, a hidden fountain, or a secret elixir, the myth expressed the same desire: to keep the flame of life burning bright. And while these tales belong to the realm of legend, they still whisper in the background of modern science. When a researcher talks about rejuvenating cells or reversing molecular damage, it can sound a little like chasing a fountain of youth. The difference is that today, the fountain is not a spring in a distant land, but a series of experiments in a laboratory. So when we hear of new discoveries about aging, it is worth remembering. The story we are telling is not new. It is an old human dream, retold in a new language. Myths of eternal youth gave voice to that dream. Now science is beginning to test whether it can be made real. For most of human history, aging was seen as a mystery beyond explanation. People might have accepted it as fate, or imagined it as the will of gods. But in the 19th and early 20th centuries, as science advanced, researchers began asking, could aging be studied like any other biological process? And if so, what were its causes? One of the earliest ideas was the wear and tear theory. In this view, the body was like a machine. Its parts were used every day, and just as a carriage wheel or a clock spring eventually wore down, so too did tissues and organs. This idea felt intuitive. After all, machines break with use. But over time, scientists noticed the body was not quite so simple. Many tissues renew themselves. Bones knit after a break, skin heals. Unlike a clock, the body repairs its gears, so while wear and tear played a role, it could not be the whole story. Another idea was the error accumulation theory. As scientists learned more about DNA and protein synthesis, they suggested that mistakes in copying the instructions of life might build up, slowly eroding the body's precision. Each error would be like a typo in a recipe. One mistake might be harmless, but over decades the instructions could become less reliable. This fit with the growing knowledge of genetics and helped explain why aging touches every organ at once. Some thinkers proposed that aging was programmed, as if built into our biology from the start. This was sometimes called the biological clock idea. Just as puberty arrives on schedule and growth slows at certain ages, perhaps aging itself was a programmed stage. This raised fascinating questions. If aging is programmed, then maybe it could be reprogrammed. But skeptics argued it made little evolutionary sense for nature to design decline. Why would natural selection favor a built-in end? By the mid-20th century, new models blended these views. Aging began to be seen not as one single mechanism, but as an interplay. Damage building up, errors creeping in, and systems slowing, all at once. These early theories may sound simple compared to modern molecular biology, but they were important first steps. They shifted the view of aging from mystery to mechanism. If aging could be explained, perhaps one day it could be altered. The questions raised a century ago are still alive today, only with far more tools to explore them. And just as myths once spoke of fountains and elixirs, these early theories opened the door to the next chapter. Could science actually extend life? When we talk about aging, it is easy to assume that all creatures follow the same rules. Time passes, bodies wear down, and eventually life comes to an end. But in nature, the picture is far more varied. Some species seem to race through life in a flash, while others drift through centuries with little sign of decline. These differences offer important clues about the genetic roots of longevity, and they remind us that aging, while universal, is not uniform. Consider the humble mouse. It lives only 2 or 3 years, even under perfect conditions. Its cells divide, its systems function, but its lifespan is short. Now compare that to a bowhead whale swimming in Arctic waters. These whales can live more than 200 years. Their skin heals quickly, their organs keep working, and they show remarkably low rates of cancer. How can one mammal be gone in 3 years, while another lasts 2 centuries? Scientists have discovered that genetics plays a powerful role. In some species, certain genes protect against damage or repair it more effectively. For example, the naked mole rat, an odd little burrowing rodent, can live up to 30 years, which is astonishingly long for an animal its size. Research shows that naked mole rats produce special molecules that make their tissues more resistant to stress. Their cells are also unusually good at folding proteins correctly, preventing the clumps that contribute to aging in other animals. Other long-lived species reveal similar secrets. Tortoises and sea turtles, for instance, can live for over 100 years. Studies of their genomes show enhanced systems for repairing DNA and resisting oxidative stress. In essence, their biology has invested heavily in maintenance. Instead of simply letting damage accumulate, their cells are constantly sweeping up errors and patching problems. Even tiny creatures hold clues. The hydra, a small freshwater animal, has shown no clear signs of aging at all in laboratory studies. Individual hydras can potentially live indefinitely, regenerating their tissues and replacing damaged cells with ease. They may not be immortal in the mythical sense. Predators and accidents still end their lives. But their biology does not appear to carry the same ticking clock that humans do. Within humans themselves, genes also shape longevity. Some families have clusters of centenarians, people living beyond 100 years. Studies of their DNA reveal subtle differences in genes that regulate inflammation, cholesterol, and the repair of DNA damage. These genes do not make them immortal, but they do tilt the balance toward resilience. Perhaps one of the most intriguing discoveries is that many long-lived species share certain themes in their genetics. They have better ways of protecting their DNA, keeping their proteins stable, and controlling cell growth to avoid cancer. It is as if nature has already run experiments in slowing aging, and left us examples scattered across the tree of life. For scientists, these discoveries are not just curiosities. They suggest that aging is not a fixed destiny. If certain genes can extend life dramatically in whales, tortoises, or mole rats, then maybe one day humans could learn to borrow some of those strategies. Already, researchers experiment with transferring protective genes into mice, or with drugs that mimic the effects of long-lived species. And yet, genetics is not everything. Identical twins with the same DNA can still live very different lengths of life, shaped by diet, exercise, environment, and luck. Genes set the stage, but lifestyle and chance determine much of the performance. Longevity is written partly in code and partly in the unfolding story of a life lived. The bigger lesson, though, is that aging is not uniform across nature. Time bends differently for different species. A mayfly lives for a day. A bristlecone pine can live for 5,000 years. Between those extremes, animals and humans follow lifespans written by both biology and circumstance. When we ask whether humans could ever stop aging, it helps to remember. Aging is not one single law of nature. It is a collection of solutions and compromises, worked out differently by every living thing. This realization opens the door to hope. If evolution has already produced species that age slowly, or barely at all, then perhaps the puzzle of human aging is not impossible. It is just unsolved. The genes of tortoises, whales, and mole rats are not fountains of youth, but they are guideposts. They point to possibilities we have not yet unlocked. And so, as we drift through this question tonight, we carry a quiet reassurance. Aging may feel inevitable, but it is not absolute. Nature has already shown that the rules can bend. The mystery lies in how far they can bend for us. Not all stories of eternal life are told as blessings. Some are told as warnings. One of the most haunting comes from Greek mythology, the tale of Tithonus. Tithonus was a mortal prince, loved by Eos, the goddess of the dawn. She adored him so much that she asked Zeus, king of the gods, to grant him immortality so they could be together forever. Zeus agreed, and Tithonus was made deathless. But in her longing, Eos had forgotten one crucial request. She asked for immortality, but not for eternal youth. At first, their life together was beautiful. Tithonus was radiant and strong, and he welcomed each morning with the goddess of the dawn. But as the years passed, his body began to wither. His hair turned gray, his skin wrinkled, his strength faded. Immortality kept him alive, but it did not stop the creeping hand of time. Eos loved him still, but her heart ached to see him shrink and weaken without end. According to some versions of the myth, his body grew so frail and twisted that the gods finally took pity and transformed him into a cicada, a small insect whose endless chirping filled the summer air. He had become a creature that lived forever, but in a state of unending decline. The story of Tithonus is powerful because it asks a question that still lingers today. Is eternal life without eternal youth truly a gift? Or is it a curse? The Greeks seemed to sense that cheating death without also cheating aging would not be paradise. It would be torment. In our own time, scientists exploring the possibility of stopping aging often return to this myth as a reminder. Even if humans found a way to avoid death, if the body continued to decline, the result would not be the dream of immortality, but the nightmare of Tithonus. The tale also touches on something deeper, the link between aging and meaning. Life feels precious because it is finite. To live forever in decline would not only be painful, it might also rob life of its shape, its natural rhythm of beginning, middle, and end. And yet, the story also stirs hope. It suggests that the true challenge is not immortality itself, but how it is paired with youth and vitality. If science could ever find a way to preserve not just life, but the freshness of youth, then perhaps Tithonus's fate could be avoided. So as we rest with this myth tonight, it reminds us that the dream of ending aging is not simple. It comes with questions that echo across centuries. The Greeks did not have laboratories or microscopes, but they already understood that eternal life, without eternal youth, is no gift at all. When we talk about the biology of aging, one of the most famous players is something small, repeating, and quietly ticking away inside every cell: the telomere. Telomeres are often called the caps of our chromosomes, and many scientists describe them as part of a biological clock that helps measure the passage of time within the body. To picture a telomere, imagine a shoelace. At the end of the lace is a plastic tip that prevents fraying. Without that tip, the lace would unravel, and soon the shoe would be useless. A telomere is like that protective tip, but instead of plastic, it is made of a repeating sequence of DNA letters. Its job is to shield the important genetic code inside from unraveling during cell division. Every time a cell divides, it must copy its DNA, and in this process, the very ends cannot be copied perfectly. A small portion of the telomere is lost. Over time, as divisions accumulate, telomeres grow shorter and shorter. Eventually, they reach a critical length. At that point, the cell can no longer divide safely. It enters a state called senescence, where it lingers alive but no longer functioning fully, or it dies. This shortening process is one of the clearest markers of aging we have discovered. Young cells have long telomeres, old cells have short ones. It is as if each cell carries a countdown timer, clicking down with each replication. Of course, the story is not quite so simple. In some cells, there is a way to extend telomeres. An enzyme called telomerase can rebuild the ends, adding back DNA and restoring the protective caps. Telomerase is active in certain cells that must last a lifetime, such as stem cells, which continually generate new tissues, or in germ cells that pass genetic material to the next generation. In most ordinary cells, however, telomerase is silent. Without it, the clock keeps ticking. This raises an intriguing possibility. If telomeres mark the passage of cellular time, could restoring them reverse aging? Could activating telomerase be like winding the clock back? In experiments with mice, scientists have tested this idea. When telomerase was reactivated in aging mice, some tissues showed signs of rejuvenation. Organs grew healthier, and cells began dividing again. It seemed like a glimpse of turning back time. But there is a catch. Telomeres also play a role in protecting against cancer. Cells with very short telomeres stop dividing, which prevents damaged DNA from replicating endlessly. If telomerase is switched on too freely, cells might grow without limit, a hallmark of cancer. In fact, many cancer cells hijack telomerase for their own survival. So while lengthening telomeres may sound like a cure for aging, it comes with a dangerous risk. Still, research continues. Scientists are exploring ways to carefully extend telomeres without unleashing uncontrolled growth. Some studies suggest lifestyle factors, such as stress reduction, good sleep, and healthy diet, may help maintain telomere length modestly. These effects are not dramatic, but they hint that telomeres respond to the environment as well as to biology. Telomeres also connect to broader questions of why species age so differently. Mice, with their short lifespans, have telomeres that shrink quickly, Humans, with much longer lives, show a slower rhythm. The comparison suggests that telomere dynamics are tuned differently in each species, depending on evolutionary needs. Beyond the lab, telomeres have captured the public imagination. They are often described in popular books and articles as the secret key to aging, or the hidden clock counting down our years. While the reality is more complex, the metaphor is powerful. Inside each of us, in every dividing cell, a quiet ticking measures time not by calendars, but by DNA. What makes telomeres especially fascinating is that they sit at the intersection of fate and possibility. They explain why cells cannot divide forever, but they also suggest ways we might slow the decline. They reveal a limit built into biology, and at the same time, a lever we might learn to adjust. So when we imagine whether humans could ever stop aging, telomeres stand as both barrier and beacon. They tell us that time is written into our chromosomes, but also that nature has already evolved ways, through telomeres, to stretch that time when it is needed. The question is not whether the clock exists, but whether we can learn how to set it differently. And as with so much in the science of aging, the answer remains open. For now, telomeres whisper to us that aging is not a single unstoppable law, but a delicate balance. A clock ticking inside, perhaps, but one that may yet be wound anew. If telomeres are a modern symbol of the quest to control aging, then the philosopher's stone was its ancient counterpart. Long before microscopes and DNA, alchemists searched for a substance that could transform matter and perhaps even grant eternal life. Their dream was not just about turning lead into gold. It was about finding the hidden key that could unlock immortality. Alchemy was practiced across cultures, in ancient China, India, the Islamic world, and medieval Europe. It blended early chemistry with philosophy, spirituality, and myth. The philosopher's stone, sometimes called the elixir of life, was imagined as a substance so pure and powerful it could heal any wound, perfect any imperfection, and even stop the aging process. To modern eyes, this may look like superstition, but alchemy served an important role. It represented humanity's first attempts to experiment with matter, to test and transform the world. Alchemists heated metals, mixed powders, and recorded their results, seeking not just wealth, but renewal. Many of their efforts failed, but in the process, they discovered chemical reactions, distilled liquids, and laid the groundwork for modern science. Stories of the philosopher's stone often painted it as a double-edged gift. Yes, it could offer youth and life, but it could also tempt people into obsession. In some tales, seekers wasted their lives chasing the stone, only to end in ruin. In others, the stone was said to appear only to those of pure spirit, as if immortality could not be earned by greed alone. One of the most famous European alchemists was Nicolas Flamel, a 14th century scribe who later became legendary for supposedly discovering the stone. Though historical records suggest he was simply a successful man who lived comfortably, folklore transformed him into an immortal who still walks the earth. Even centuries later, his name appears in stories, novels, and films, a reminder of the enduring allure of alchemy. The myth of the philosopher's stone echoes the same longing as the fountain of youth or the peaches of immortality, the hope that somewhere, hidden in nature, is a cure for time. Today, scientists work not with powders and crucibles, but with genes, enzymes, and molecules. Yet the spirit feels similar. In a way, every experiment to repair DNA or lengthen telomeres is a modern echo of that alchemical dream. And perhaps the deeper meaning of the philosopher's stone is this: that the quest itself changes us. Alchemists never found the stone, but their searching transformed knowledge. In the same way, even if humanity never truly stops aging, the effort to understand it brings us closer to understanding ourselves. If telomeres are the ticking clock of our chromosomes, then mitochondria are the engines that keep life moving. These tiny structures live inside nearly every cell, and their job is simple but vital. They turn food into energy. Without them, muscles would not contract, hearts would not beat, and thoughts would not flicker in the brain. They are often called the powerhouses of the cell. But like any engine, they produce not only energy, but also wear and waste. Over time, this waste builds up, and with it, the marks of aging. Mitochondria generate energy through a process called respiration. They take in nutrients and oxygen, then release a molecule called ATP, the universal currency of energy in biology. Every blink of your eye, every step you take, every dream you have at night, ATP makes it possible. But the process is not perfectly clean. Alongside ATP, mitochondria release small reactive molecules known as free radicals. These molecules act like sparks flying off a fire. Most are harmless, quickly extinguished by the cell's defenses, but some strike nearby proteins, lipids, or even DNA, causing damage. This damage is called oxidative stress. Over decades, oxidative stress leaves its signature across the body. Membranes become less flexible, proteins misfold, and DNA gathers scars. It is like rust slowly creeping across the machinery of life. The free radical theory of aging, proposed in the 1950s by scientist Denham Harmon, suggested that this accumulation of oxidative damage was a key driver of aging. While modern science has refined the idea, the core insight still holds. Mitochondria give us life, but they also slowly wear us down. What makes mitochondria even more intriguing is that they have their own DNA. Long ago, mitochondria were free-living bacteria, absorbed by larger cells in a partnership that gave rise to complex life. They carry a small ring of genetic material, separate from the cell's main DNA. But unlike the chromosomes in the nucleus, mitochondrial DNA has fewer protections. It is more vulnerable to mutations, and over time, those mutations can accumulate. Faulty mitochondrial DNA can lead to less efficient energy production, more free radicals, and a downward spiral of decline. In some diseases, mitochondrial dysfunction is stark. Conditions like Parkinson's disease, certain forms of muscular dystrophy, and even some cases of premature aging show clear links to damaged mitochondria. But even in healthy individuals, the gradual loss of mitochondrial efficiency appears to be part of the broader picture of aging. So the question arises, could supporting or repairing mitochondria slow the aging process? Research suggests it might. Experiments in animals show that boosting certain pathways that protect mitochondria can extend lifespan. Compounds like coenzyme Q10, antioxidants, and certain drugs have been tested with mixed results. Some studies suggest they reduce oxidative stress, but others find little effect. It seems the problem is more complex than just adding more shields against sparks. Other approaches focus on removing old, damaged mitochondria and replacing them with fresh ones. Cells have a recycling system called mitophagy, where faulty mitochondria are broken down and their parts reused. In young cells, this system works well. In older cells, it slows, and damaged mitochondria linger. Stimulating mitophagy is one area of active research, as it could clear away the rust and make space for healthier engines. There are also experiments in transferring healthy mitochondria into cells with damaged ones. Early studies show this can revive function in some tissues, though the techniques are still in their infancy. If perfected, it could one day mean rejuvenating organs by giving them fresh energy supplies. Lifestyle also plays a role in mitochondrial health. Exercise, for example, stimulates the production of new mitochondria, especially in muscle cells. This may be one reason why regular physical activity is so strongly linked to longer health span. Calorie restriction, another well-studied intervention, also seems to improve mitochondrial efficiency, perhaps by putting cells into a protective, energy-conserving mode. What makes mitochondria so central to the story of aging is their double role. They are both the spark of vitality and a source of slow decay. They embody the paradox of life, energy that sustains but also erodes. When we imagine whether humans could stop aging, mitochondria remind us that the challenge is not only to keep systems running, but to keep them running cleanly. It is not enough to have energy. It must be energy without excess sparks, power without corrosion. Nature has already shown that some species manage this balance better than others. Birds, for example, have high metabolic rates, but surprisingly long lifespans, suggesting they handle oxidative stress differently than mammals. Unlocking those secrets may one day help humans, too. For now, mitochondria stand as both allies and adversaries. They give us the strength to live each day, even as they leave subtle marks of time behind. To care for them is, in a sense, to care for the engines of life itself. And perhaps one day, with science and patience, we may learn how to keep those engines humming far longer than nature once intended. Across cultures, humans have told stories of beings who escape aging altogether. Some are gods, others are spirits, and a few are mortals who stumble into immortality. These tales remind us that the dream of ending aging is not just a scientific question. It is also a myth woven into our oldest traditions. In Greek mythology, the gods of Olympus were ageless. Zeus, Hera, Athena, they did not wrinkle, weaken, or grow old. Their power was tied to their eternal youth, sustained by the divine nectar and ambrosia they consumed. Mortals, by contrast, aged and died, creating a stark line between human frailty and divine permanence. In Norse stories, even the gods were not truly eternal. They relied on golden apples tended by the goddess Idun to stay young. Without these apples, their bodies would falter. This image is striking. Even mighty Thor and Odin, so fierce in battle, depended on a fruit to keep aging at bay. The myth suggests that youth is not a permanent gift, but something that must be renewed. In Hindu tradition, certain sages and ascetics were said to transcend ordinary human limits. Through meditation, discipline, and the pursuit of spiritual truth, they could live for centuries, untouched by age. Their stories reflect another path to immortality, not through magic objects, but through inner mastery. In Chinese mythology, the 8 immortals are legendary figures who achieved everlasting life, often through wisdom, virtue, or secret elixirs. They became symbols of hope, representing the possibility that ordinary people might rise above the limits of time. Even in folklore closer to our own time, we find echoes of the immortal. Vampires, for example, are often described as frozen in youth, forever avoiding the decay of age. But these stories usually come with a shadow, immortality at the cost of something vital, whether it be humanity, love, or freedom. What these myths share is a tension. Immortality is tempting, but it is rarely portrayed as simple or carefree. To live forever without aging often comes with conditions, risks, or burdens. The gods must keep their nectar, the Norse must guard their apples, the vampire must feed on blood. Immortality always has a price. These stories linger because they capture both sides of the human dream. On one hand, we long to escape decline and hold on to youth. On the other, we sense that endless life might change us in ways we do not expect. Myths keep that tension alive, reminding us that the end of aging is not just a biological puzzle. It is also a question of what it means to be human. As we age, many of our cells keep dividing, repairing, and replacing damaged tissue. But some cells reach a point where they can no longer divide. They don't die immediately either. Instead, they enter a strange limbo, a state scientists call cellular senescence. A senescent cell is like a retired worker who refuses to leave the factory floor. It no longer contributes to the workload, but it also doesn't go away. At first, this might not seem like a big problem. A few idle cells in a sea of active ones would hardly matter. But over the years, senescent cells accumulate, and as they do, they begin to change the environment around them. Instead of sitting quietly, senescent cells release a cocktail of signals, proteins and molecules that stir up inflammation and disrupt their neighbors. This is called the senescence-associated secretory phenotype, or SASP for short. These signals can cause healthy cells nearby to function less efficiently, or even to become senescent themselves. It is like one idle worker turning to gossip, slowly distracting others until the entire workplace becomes less productive. This buildup of senescent cells contributes to many of the signs of aging. Inflammation spreads through tissues, slowing healing and increasing the risk of chronic diseases. Blood vessels lose flexibility, joints ache, the skin loses its elasticity. Even the immune system weakens under the influence of senescent signals. And yet, senescence is not entirely bad. In youth, it plays a protective role. When a cell has too much DNA damage, entering senescence prevents it from dividing further and possibly becoming cancerous. In wound healing, senescent cells briefly appear to help orchestrate repair before fading away. The problem arises when these cells linger too long, accumulating like clutter that is never cleaned out. In recent years, scientists have begun exploring ways to clear senescent cells from the body. Drugs designed to selectively kill these lingering cells are called senolytics. In laboratory experiments with mice, senolytics have produced remarkable results. Older mice given these treatments often regain some youthful function. Their fur becomes shinier, their organs healthier, and their physical activity improves. In some studies, they even live longer. The possibility that one day humans could take a therapy to sweep out senescent cells is both exciting and daunting. On one hand, it suggests that aging might be slowed, or at least its worst effects softened. On the other, it raises questions of safety. Senescent cells do serve useful roles in certain contexts. If we removed them completely, would we lose important defenses? Scientists are working carefully to find the right balance, removing the harmful clutter without erasing the beneficial signals. Beyond drugs, lifestyle may also influence senescence. Regular exercise, for instance, seems to reduce the burden of senescent cells in tissues. Calorie restriction and certain diets have shown similar effects in animal studies. While these strategies do not eliminate senescence entirely, they may help slow its accumulation. The idea of senescent cells has also captured the imagination outside of laboratories. They are sometimes called zombie cells because they linger on after their useful life, refusing to die. The metaphor is a little dramatic, but it captures the sense of unease, These are cells that should have stepped aside, but instead haunt the body, slowly dragging it down. What makes senescence such an important part of the aging story is that it illustrates the trade-offs of biology. A process that protects us in youth becomes harmful in age. A system designed to prevent cancer contributes to frailty decades later. Nature often works this way, optimizing survival through the reproductive years, but leaving the later years less guarded. If humans ever find a way to stop or slow aging, clearing senescent cells will almost certainly be part of the strategy. Already, clinical trials are underway to test senolytic therapies in people with conditions like lung disease or arthritis. The hope is that by reducing the burden of senescent cells, symptoms will improve and resilience will return. For now, senescent cells remind us that aging is not simply about time passing. It is about the quiet clutter that builds up in our tissues, the signals that grow louder with age, and the delicate balance between protection and harm. They are the guests who never leave, sometimes helpful, often troublesome, and always part of the story of growing old. So far, we've looked at aging through the lens of biology: telomeres, mitochondria, senescent cells. But there is another side to the story. Aging is not only a process of the body, it is also the frame that gives shape to life itself. Without it, love, art, and memory might feel very different. Think about the arc of a human life. Childhood is fleeting, adulthood has its season, and old age brings its own perspective. These stages give our experiences meaning. Falling in love feels urgent because time is limited. Creating art feels worthwhile because it may outlast us. Raising children carries weight because we know one day they will carry on in our place. Mortality is the quiet boundary that makes every moment precious. Writers and philosophers have often reflected on this. The Roman poet Horace urged his readers to carpe diem, to seize the day, because the days are numbered. The Japanese concept of mono no aware captures a similar idea, that beauty is heightened by its impermanence. Cherry blossoms are treasured precisely because they bloom for such a short time. Aging, in this view, is not just a loss. It is the condition that makes joy sharp and unforgettable. Even our creativity is shaped by mortality. Many artists have spoken of feeling driven by the awareness that time is short. The painter works to finish her canvas. The composer writes to leave behind music that will be played after he is gone. In a strange way, the limit of time pushes humans to transcend it through art, invention, and legacy. Love, too, takes on depth because of aging. To grow old with someone is to share not only joys, but decline. Wrinkles and gray hair become symbols of years weathered together. Without aging, relationships might lose that sense of journey, of building a life through time. This is why some philosophers warn that if humans ever stopped aging, life might feel strangely flat. Without endings, beginnings lose their sharpness. Without the pressure of time, choices may not feel as urgent. We could, in theory, delay every decision, every commitment, because we would always have more time. And yet, the longing to escape aging is not foolish. It is natural to wish for more days with loved ones, more years of health, more chances to see the world. Perhaps the challenge is not to see mortality as an enemy, but as a teacher. It reminds us that every moment matters, that even in the face of decline, life retains its richness. So as we imagine the possibility of stopping aging, it is worth pausing to ask, what would we lose as well as what we might gain? The answer may not be simple, but tonight, as you rest, you can let this thought settle gently. Aging shapes not only our bodies, but also our meaning. Every cell in your body depends on proteins. They are the true workhorses of life. Enzymes that speed up chemical reactions, receptors that sense signals, fibers that give tissues strength. All of them are proteins. To function, these molecules must fold into precise three-dimensional shapes, like origami sculptures. A misfolded protein is like a tool bent out of shape. It no longer fits its lock, cuts its paper, or holds its weight. When we are young, cells have efficient systems for making sure proteins fold correctly. Molecular chaperones help guide the folding process, and if a protein does misfold, it can often be repaired or recycled. But with age, these systems weaken. Misfolded proteins accumulate, and some begin to clump together. Over time, these clumps can become plaques, sticky masses that disrupt cell function. One of the most well-known examples is in the brain. In Alzheimer's disease, clumps of a protein called beta amyloid form sticky plaques between neurons. Inside the neurons, twisted tangles of another protein, tau, appear. These changes interfere with communication, memory, and cognition. Though Alzheimer's is an extreme case, it illustrates a broader truth. Protein misfolding can wreak havoc on aging tissues. Misfolding also plays a role in other conditions. In Parkinson's disease, a protein called alpha-synuclein clumps into toxic aggregates. In Huntington's disease, a misfolded protein disrupts nerve cells. Even outside of the nervous system, misfolded proteins can cause trouble. In the eye, for example, misfolded crystalline proteins cloud the lens, leading to cataracts. But why do proteins misfold more often with age? Part of the answer lies in the cell's cleanup systems. Normally, damaged proteins are broken down by structures called proteasomes and lysosomes, which act like recycling plants. With age, these systems lose efficiency. Imagine a city where garbage collection slows down, the streets grow cluttered, and the whole system suffers. Something similar happens in aging cells. Oxidative stress, often generated by mitochondria, also damages proteins, making them more likely to misfold. Once damaged, proteins can stick together, creating clumps too large for the cell to clear. These clumps, in turn, disrupt other processes, creating a vicious cycle. Scientists studying aging now see protein misfolding as one of its hallmarks. Just as telomere shortening and senescent cells are central features, so too is the gradual loss of protein quality control. And just as with other hallmarks, researchers are looking for ways to intervene. Some approaches focus on enhancing the cell's natural cleanup systems. By stimulating autophagy, the process by which cells recycle their components, scientists hope to sweep away misfolded proteins more efficiently. In animal studies, boosting autophagy has extended lifespan and improved health. Calorie restriction, one of the most reliable lifespan-extending interventions, seems to work in part by enhancing this recycling process. Other strategies aim to design drugs or molecules that can stabilize proteins, keeping them folded correctly for longer. A few such compounds are already in use for rare diseases caused by specific misfolding problems. The hope is that one day similar approaches could protect against broader age-related decline. The study of long-lived species also offers clues. Naked mole rats, for instance, have remarkably stable proteins. Their cells resist clumping and misfolding even late in life. Understanding how they maintain this stability may point to strategies humans could adopt. Protein misfolding also connects back to the larger question of what aging is. In many ways, it is not just the passage of time, but the slow accumulation of errors, DNA mutations, oxidative damage, and in this case, proteins that lose their shape. These errors crowd the system, jam the machinery, and eventually overwhelm the repair crews. And yet, just as with telomeres and mitochondria, misfolding is not destiny. It is a challenge, one that nature has found ways to mitigate in some species, and one that science is beginning to address. If we could keep proteins folding properly, or clear away clumps more effectively, we might not stop aging entirely, but we could preserve function much longer. So when you hear about plaques in the brain or cataracts in the eye, it is worth remembering. These are not just isolated conditions. They are part of the broader story of aging, where the machinery of life, once precise and graceful, begins to jam. And just as a skilled craftsman can repair a bent tool, future medicine may one day restore the elegance of proteins, keeping the gears of life turning smoothly for far longer than we once imagined. Centuries ago, alchemists huddled over furnaces, mixing powders and distilling potions in the hope of finding the philosopher's stone. Today, the laboratories look different. Sleek glass buildings instead of stone chambers, machines instead of crucibles. But the dream remains much the same. Now, the modern alchemists are found in Silicon Valley. In recent years, some of the world's wealthiest entrepreneurs have turned their attention to aging. They see it not as an unavoidable fate, but as a problem waiting to be solved. Companies with names like Calico, Altos Labs, and Unity Biotechnology have been founded with the goal of slowing, reversing, or even eliminating aging. Backed by billions of dollars, they explore gene therapy, cellular reprogramming, and drugs designed to target the hallmarks of aging. The logic is straightforward. Technology has already transformed so many aspects of human life, from communication to medicine. Why not aging? If disease can be cured and organs replaced, why shouldn't the aging process itself be treated as a condition that can be managed? Among the boldest ideas is cellular reprogramming. By using a set of factors discovered in 2006, now called the Yamanaka factors, scientists have shown it is possible to turn adult cells back into youthful stem-like states. Some believe that carefully controlling this process could one day rejuvenate whole tissues, rolling back the cellular clock. For the tech-minded optimists of Silicon Valley, this sounds like the very edge of possibility, a true scientific fountain of youth. But as with the myths of old, there are warnings. Biology is not software. It does not always respond to commands in neat, predictable ways. Experiments in reprogramming have shown promise, but also risks. Cells pushed too far may turn cancerous. Slowing aging may not be as simple as updating a program or replacing a chip. Still, the optimism persists. The dream of extending human life resonates strongly in a place where ambition and wealth collide. These new alchemists believe that if enough resources are devoted, breakthroughs are only a matter of time. Some speak openly of wanting to live not just decades longer, but centuries. Critics point out that such ambitions raise ethical questions. Who would have access to these treatments? Would they deepen inequality if only the rich could afford them? And what would societies look like if lifespans stretched far beyond what we know? The parallels to alchemy are striking. Then, as now, seekers chased the hope of transformation. Then, as now, the quest itself drove discovery, even when the ultimate prize remained elusive. The Silicon Valley dreamers may not find immortality, but in their searching, they may uncover new therapies that improve health for everyone. So while the philosopher's stone was never found, its spirit lives on. The laboratories may glow with LED lights instead of candle flames, but the longing is the same: to hold back the hand of time, and to glimpse what life might be like if aging could be rewritten. The immune system is one of the body's most remarkable defenses. It stands guard against viruses, bacteria, and even rogue cells within us. When we are young, this system is quick, sharp, and adaptable. But with age, it begins to drift. Reactions slow, mistakes increase, and the balance between protection and harm shifts. This gradual decline is called immunosenescence, and it is a central part of the story of aging. At its core, the immune system is made of two arms, innate and adaptive. The innate immune system is the first responder. It acts quickly, using general tools to fight off invaders. The adaptive immune system is more specialized, creating precise antibodies and memory cells that remember threats for the future. Together, these systems keep us healthy, often without us even realizing the battles being fought within. In youth, the adaptive system is especially powerful. Children and young adults can mount strong responses to new infections, and once they recover, they carry immune memories that last for years. But as time passes, the thymus gland, where many immune cells mature, shrinks dramatically. This reduces the production of fresh T cells, which are crucial for targeting new threats. By middle age, the thymus is a fraction of its original size, and new T cell production is limited. The immune system becomes less able to learn new tricks. Meanwhile, older immune cells can become less precise. Some produce weaker responses, while others may turn against the body itself, contributing to autoimmune conditions. The balance between defense and self-attack becomes more fragile. At the same time, the innate system, which should be quick and efficient, begins to stir up chronic low-level inflammation. Scientists call this inflammaging, a constant background hum of inflammatory signals that never fully turn off. In small amounts, inflammation is useful, helping heal wounds and fight infections. But when it becomes chronic, it damages tissues, contributes to heart disease, arthritis, and even dementia. The result is a paradox. The aging immune system is both weaker and more aggressive. It fails to respond strongly when needed, yet it causes harm by staying too active at the wrong times. This double shift explains why older adults are more vulnerable to infections like influenza or pneumonia, and why vaccines often work less effectively with age. It also sheds light on why chronic diseases become more common in later life. Scientists studying immunosenescence are exploring ways to counteract it. Some approaches aim to rejuvenate the thymus or boost T-cell production. Experiments in mice suggest it is possible to regrow thymic tissue and restore some immune function. Other strategies focus on dialing down chronic inflammation, either with drugs or lifestyle interventions like diet and exercise. Lifestyle does matter. Regular activity, adequate sleep, and balanced nutrition all help support immune function at any age. In particular, diets rich in fruits, vegetables, and healthy fats seem to reduce inflammation, giving the immune system a calmer baseline from which to work. There is also growing interest in immune training. This involves stimulating the innate system in controlled ways so it remains alert without tipping into chronic activity. Certain vaccines, for instance, may provide broader benefits than just protection against one disease. They appear to exercise the immune system, keeping it in shape. The immune system's drift with age reminds us of how interconnected the body is. A change in one system ripples outward. Declining immunity does not only mean more colds, it means slower wound healing, greater cancer risk, and rising vulnerability to nearly every age-related condition. Yet, as with telomeres, mitochondria, and senescent cells, the immune system also carries hope. If we can restore balance, quieter inflammation, stronger precision, renewed adaptability, we could ease many of the burdens of aging. Already, clinical research is exploring drugs that target specific inflammatory signals, vaccines tailored for older immune systems, and therapies that may one day reset the immune clock. For now, the slow drift of immunity is part of what shapes the aging experience. In youth, the system is a fierce guardian. With age, it becomes more like an old soldier, still standing but less steady, sometimes confused, and prone to firing at the wrong targets. Understanding this drift not only helps us imagine how to extend life, but also how to preserve its quality. And as we drift with this thought tonight, it may be comforting to remember. Your immune system, even as it ages, has carried you through countless unseen battles already. Each breath you take is a quiet victory of defense, a reminder of how much still works, even in the face of time. Earlier we told the Greek myth of Tithonus, the mortal man granted immortality but not eternal youth, who withered endlessly until the gods turned him into a cicada. That story, thousands of years old, carries lessons that remain surprisingly relevant to modern science. At first glance, the myth might seem like a simple cautionary tale. Be careful what you wish for. But at its heart, it addresses a dilemma that scientists face even today. What if we extend life without extending health? What if we succeed in making bodies last longer, but those bodies continue to decline, weighed down by frailty and disease? Would that not be a modern version of Tithonus's fate? This challenge is central to the field of aging research. Scientists often distinguish between lifespan and healthspan. Lifespan is the number of years lived. Healthspan is the number of years lived in good health, free of disability and chronic illness. The tragedy of Tithonus was not that he lived forever, but that his health span did not keep pace with his lifespan. His story is a mythic illustration of why health span matters just as much, if not more, than lifespan. The myth also points to the emotional and social dimensions of aging. Imagine living far beyond friends, family, and community while continuing to decline. The loneliness and suffering would weigh as heavily as the physical frailty. Tithonus embodies not just biological decay, but the existential burden of endless decline. In this sense, the myth serves as a reminder to scientists and dreamers alike. The goal is not simply to defeat death at any cost, but to cultivate lives that remain vibrant and connected. Extending life without extending vitality could be a hollow victory. Modern research reflects this lesson. Many therapies now being explored, whether senolytics, telomere extension, or mitochondrial repair, are not just about adding years. They are about adding healthy years. Scientists often speak of compressing morbidity, meaning shortening the period of illness at the end of life, so that people live well until close to their natural end. If true breakthroughs come, they may stretch this period of health further still. Tithonus's story, then, is more than a warning. It is a guide. It tells us what to avoid: endless years of weakness without renewal. It tells us what to seek: longevity paired with youth, endurance paired with vitality. So as we reflect on the possibility of ending aging, the myth lingers in the background like a gentle voice. It reminds us that immortality, without the freshness of health, is no gift at all. And in that reminder, it quietly aligns with the very goals of modern science. If aging is driven by processes like telomere shortening, mitochondrial decline, protein misfolding, and senescent cells, then the natural question follows: can we intervene? Over the past century, scientists have tested a wide range of strategies to slow or even reverse aspects of aging. While no single cure exists, The experiments themselves reveal both the challenges and the promise of rejuvenation. One of the earliest and most enduring discoveries is calorie restriction. In the 1930s, researchers found that mice given a diet with fewer calories, but still full of nutrients, lived significantly longer. Since then, similar results have been seen in yeast, worms, flies, and monkeys. Calorie restriction seems to activate protective pathways in cells, making them more resilient to stress, improving mitochondrial function, and enhancing recycling processes like autophagy. In essence, eating less puts the body into a mode of careful maintenance. For humans, calorie restriction is harder to test. Some studies suggest health benefits like improved blood sugar control and reduced inflammation, but long-term effects on lifespan remain unclear. Still, the discovery inspired a wave of research into molecules that might mimic the effects of calorie restriction without requiring drastic diets. Compounds like resveratrol, found in red wine, and drugs like rapamycin and metformin have been tested for this purpose. Some show promise in animals, though the results in people are still being studied. Another approach targets senescent cells, those zombie-like cells that linger and release harmful signals. Drugs called senolytics are designed to selectively clear these cells from tissues. In mouse studies, senolytics have produced striking effects: improved organ function, greater physical activity, and extended lifespan. Early human trials are now underway, testing whether clearing senescent cells can help conditions like arthritis, lung disease, or kidney decline. If successful, senolytics could become one of the first true anti-aging therapies. Researchers have also experimented with blood factors. In a curious set of studies, young and old mice were surgically joined, so they shared a circulatory system. The older mice seemed to gain renewed vitality, while the younger ones showed signs of decline. This suggested that molecules in the blood of young animals might restore function in older ones. Since then, scientists have tried to identify those molecules, hoping to harness them without the unsettling procedure. Some early clinical trials have explored transfusions of young plasma in humans, though results so far are mixed. More futuristic still is cellular reprogramming. In 2006, Shinya Yamanaka discovered that 4 specific factors could turn adult cells back into stem-like cells, capable of becoming any tissue. These Yamanaka factors won him the Nobel Prize and sparked enormous excitement. If aging is like a clock, reprogramming seemed like a way to wind it back. Experiments in mice show that partial reprogramming, carefully applied, can rejuvenate tissues and improve health. But if pushed too far, it can also cause uncontrolled growth, even cancer. The challenge is to find a safe balance. Other interventions focus on supporting mitochondrial health, enhancing protein cleanup, or bolstering the immune system. Exercise remains one of the simplest and most effective ways to stimulate these protective processes. In many ways, it is a natural rejuvenator, promoting new mitochondria, reducing inflammation, and keeping systems in balance. Taken together, these experiments reveal a pattern. Aging is not a single enemy to defeat, but a series of processes to manage. Calorie restriction, senolytics, blood factors, reprogramming, all of them touch different parts of the puzzle. None yet offer a complete solution, but each brings us closer to understanding how the puzzle fits together. The excitement around these experiments also highlights the shift in perspective. For most of history, aging was accepted as inevitable. Now, scientists talk about it as something that might be slowed, modified, or even reversed in part. The very fact that we can test these ideas marks a profound change in how humanity relates to time. Of course, challenges remain. What works in mice may not work in humans. What helps in the short term may have risks in the long term. Rejuvenation may turn out to be not a single breakthrough, but a combination of therapies, each targeting a different aspect of decline. Still, the experiments give reason for quiet hope. They suggest that the dream of extending not just lifespan, but health span is not pure fantasy. It is a frontier being explored step by step, spark by spark, in laboratories around the world. While scientists run experiments in laboratories, nature occasionally provides its own rare examples of extraordinary longevity. These are the supercentenarians, people who live beyond the age of 110. They are rare, numbering only a few hundred worldwide at any given time. But their lives hold clues about the limits of human aging and the possibility of extending health into extreme old age. Most people, even in wealthy nations, do not reach 100. Those who do often experience a gradual decline. But supercentenarians are different. Many remain surprisingly healthy until very near the end. Their decline, when it comes, is often short and sudden, rather than drawn out. Scientists call this compressed morbidity, a brief final stage of illness after many years of resilience. What makes them different? Studies suggest that supercentenarians often carry genetic variations that protect against age-related diseases. Some have genes that regulate cholesterol more effectively, keeping arteries clear. Others show enhanced repair systems for DNA damage or better control of inflammation. No single gene guarantees such longevity, but the pattern suggests that a combination of protective traits stacks the odds in their favor. Lifestyle also plays a role. Many supercentenarians report diets rich in simple, whole foods, often tied to their culture and environment. Some lived physically active lives well into old age, walking daily, gardening, or working with their hands. Social connections, too, appear important. Communities that foster strong bonds often produce more centenarians, hinting that meaning and belonging may contribute to resilience. One famous example is Jeanne Calment of France, who lived to 122 years, the longest verified human lifespan. She was known for her wit, her calm outlook, and her simple routines. Others have been studied in Okinawa, Japan, or Sardinia, Italy, regions sometimes called blue zones for their unusually high concentrations of centenarians. While culture, diet, and environment matter, genetics appears to provide an essential foundation for reaching extreme ages. Supercentenarians are valuable not only for what they teach us about aging, but also for what they suggest about possibility. If some humans can live healthily into their second century, then the biology of aging may be more flexible than once thought. Their lives demonstrate that decline is not uniform, and that even within our species, the boundaries of aging can stretch farther than most will ever experience. For scientists, studying these rare individuals is like examining the peaks of a mountain range. Most of us live on the lower slopes, but the peaks reveal what is possible under the right conditions. Unlocking their secrets may not make everyone live to 110, but it could help more people reach their 80s and 90s in good health. And so, when we ask whether humans could ever stop aging, supercentenarians remind us that the question is not entirely abstract. Nature has already given us examples of extraordinary longevity hidden among us. Their lives whisper that the human body is capable of far more than we usually see, and that the line between aging and vitality may be more flexible than we imagine. In 2006, a discovery shook the world of biology. Shinya Yamanaka, a Japanese scientist, showed that just 4 specific proteins could reprogram adult cells into a youthful stem cell-like state. These four proteins, now called the Yamanaka factors, could rewind the developmental clock, turning specialized skin or blood cells back into something close to embryonic stem cells. For this, Yamanaka won the Nobel Prize in 2012. But the implications went far beyond stem cell research. Suddenly, the idea of reversing aging at the cellular level seemed possible. Stem cells are special because they can become many different cell types. In embryos, they build the body from scratch. In adults, smaller reservoirs of stem cells remain, helping replenish tissues. But as we age, even these stem cells lose vitality. Reprogramming offers a way to restore their youthful power, or even to make entirely new ones. Early experiments were dramatic. Adult cells exposed to Yamanaka factors reverted to pluripotent stem cells, capable of dividing endlessly and forming any tissue. For regenerative medicine, this was a revolution. Scientists could now grow replacement tissues in the lab, opening doors to treating injuries, organ failure, or degenerative diseases. But when it came to aging, the discovery raised a tantalizing question. If a single cell could be turned back in time, could whole tissues, or even entire bodies, be rejuvenated? Here lies both the promise and the danger. Full reprogramming resets cells completely, but it also erases their identity. A reprogrammed skin cell, for example, no longer knows it is skin. Worse, if cells divide uncontrollably in this state, they can form tumors. In mice, attempts to apply Yamanaka factors broadly often led to cancer. The challenge became clear: how to capture the benefits of reprogramming without the risks. The solution scientists are exploring is partial reprogramming. By exposing cells to Yamanaka factors for just a short time, not long enough to erase their identity, cells can regain youthful function while staying true to their role. In experiments with mice, partial reprogramming has rejuvenated tissues, improved healing, and even extended lifespan in certain disease models. It is as if the clock was wound back just a little, enough to restore vigor without losing form. Alongside Yamanaka factors, stem cell therapies are also advancing. Researchers can grow specific tissues, like heart muscle, neurons, or skin, from stem cells and transplant them to repair damage. Some labs are working on rejuvenating the body's own stem cell reserves, so they continue producing fresh, youthful cells longer. Others envision bioengineered organs, built from a patient's own reprogrammed cells, eliminating the need for transplants altogether. Yet, as exciting as this sounds, the work is still in its early stages. Most results come from animal studies or lab experiments. Applying reprogramming safely in humans remains a distant goal. The risk of cancer, the complexity of controlling gene expression, and the unknown long-term effects are major hurdles. Still, the direction is clear. Reprogramming represents one of the boldest frontiers in anti-aging science. It does not merely slow damage, it attempts to reverse it, to make cells act as if they were young again. If successful, it could go beyond extending health span. It could reshape what it means to age at all. Some scientists imagine a future where periodic treatments reset tissues, keeping them in a youthful state indefinitely. Others dream of growing replacement organs on demand, ensuring that no vital system ever wears out. The possibilities sound almost mythical, yet they rest on discoveries already made in the lab. For now, reprogramming stands as both beacon and caution. It offers dazzling potential, but also sharp risks. Just as with telomeres and senescent cells, the question is not whether we can intervene, but how carefully we can do so. And so, when we wonder whether humans could ever stop aging, Yamanaka factors provide a glimpse of the boldest answer yet, not simply to slow the clock, but to wind it back. Whether that dream becomes reality remains uncertain, but its light already guides the path forward. Not all living things follow the same rules of aging that humans do. In fact, a few species seem to escape aging almost entirely, living in a way that appears timeless. Among the most fascinating are the hydra and the immortal jellyfish, tiny creatures that have captured the imagination of biologists and storytellers alike. The hydra is a small freshwater animal, no longer than a fingernail. It looks simple, just a tube-like body with tentacles, but it holds an extraordinary secret. In laboratory studies, hydras show little or no signs of aging. They can regenerate lost parts with ease, sprouting new tentacles, or even regrowing an entire body from a fragment. Scientists have kept hydras alive for years without detecting decline. Some believe that, given the right conditions, hydras could live indefinitely. The secret lies in their cells. Unlike most animals, hydras maintain an abundant supply of stem cells that continually renew their tissues. Where human cells eventually slow, hydra cells remain endlessly youthful, dividing and replacing without apparent limit. It is as if the hydra carries a fountain of youth within its body. The immortal jellyfish, Turritopsis dohrnii, offers another strange twist on the rules of life. Most jellyfish follow a cycle. They begin as tiny polyps attached to the sea floor, then grow into the familiar bell-shaped medusae that drift through the water. Eventually, they weaken and die. But Turritopsis has found a loophole. When stressed, injured, or aging, it can revert its adult cells back into the polyp stage, starting its life cycle anew. In effect, it transforms itself backward in time, avoiding death by returning to youth. This ability is called transdifferentiation, the direct conversion of one type of cell into another. While rare in nature, the immortal jellyfish uses it to reset its body again and again. It does not mean the jellyfish is truly immortal. Predators and disease can still end its life. But it sidesteps aging in a way no human can. For scientists, these creatures are more than curiosities. They show that aging is not inevitable for all life. Biology has already found ways, in certain species, to bend or even escape the rules of decline. Studying them may reveal insights into regeneration, stem cell maintenance, and cellular plasticity that could one day inform human medicine. For the rest of us, the hydra and the jellyfish serve as gentle reminders that nature is far more varied than we imagine. Aging feels universal because it touches us and most animals we know. But somewhere in a pond or drifting in the sea, small creatures quietly live outside the boundaries we take for granted. And so when we ask whether humans could ever stop aging, these tiny immortals whisper back. In some corners of life, the answer is already yes. When we think about stopping aging, our minds often turn to futuristic laboratories and cutting-edge therapies. But even as science explores telomeres, mitochondria, and cellular reprogramming, some of the most reliable tools for extending health remain simple: how we sleep, how we move, and what we eat. Lifestyle does not halt the aging process, but it can profoundly shape how gracefully or how painfully we age. Sleep is one of the most underrated factors in longevity. During deep sleep, the body carries out vital repair processes. Damaged DNA is patched, proteins are cleared, and the brain flushes away metabolic waste through a system called the glymphatic pathway. Missing sleep does more than leave us tired. It accelerates wear and tear at the cellular level. Chronic sleep deprivation, is linked to higher risks of heart disease, diabetes, and dementia. By contrast, consistent, high-quality sleep supports immune function, keeps inflammation low, and helps maintain healthy metabolism. In this sense, sleep is not simply rest. It is nightly maintenance. A well-rested body is one that ages more slowly. Movement is another cornerstone of healthy aging. Exercise stimulates the production of new mitochondria, keeping the cellular engines efficient. It also improves circulation, strengthens the heart, and helps regulate blood sugar. Beyond the physical, exercise promotes the release of chemicals in the brain that support mood and cognitive function. Studies consistently show that regular physical activity can extend health span, reducing the risk of chronic diseases and preserving mobility into later years. Even moderate activities, like daily walking, gardening, or light strength training, make a significant difference. The benefits are not limited to muscles or bones. They ripple through every system of the body. One fascinating effect of exercise is its influence on telomeres. Some studies suggest that physically active people have longer telomeres than their sedentary peers, hinting that movement may literally slow the ticking of the cellular clock. What we eat also plays a central role. Diets rich in whole foods, fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, and healthy fats, are consistently associated with longer, healthier lives. These foods provide antioxidants that help neutralize free radicals, reducing oxidative stress. They also supply fiber and micronutrients that support digestion, metabolism, and immune balance. Regions known as blue zones, where people often live past 100, share common dietary traits. Meals are typically plant-centered, with modest amounts of fish or lean meats, limited processed foods, and moderate caloric intake. In these communities, food is not only fuel but also part of a social fabric, eaten slowly and often shared with family and friends. Beyond broad dietary patterns, specific compounds have drawn attention. Resveratrol, found in grapes and red wine, may activate protective cellular pathways. Omega-3 fatty acids from fish support brain and heart health. Polyphenols in vegetables and teas reduce inflammation. While no single nutrient is a magic bullet, together they form a network of small protections that add up over decades. Lifestyle also includes less tangible elements. Chronic stress accelerates aging by flooding the body with hormones like cortisol, which disrupt immune function and increase inflammation. Practices that reduce stress, meditation, time in nature, meaningful hobbies, help counteract this effect. Social connection plays a role too. Loneliness is linked to shorter lifespan and poorer health, while strong relationships provide emotional support that buffers the challenges of age. In this sense, lifestyle is not just what we do with our bodies, but also how we nurture our minds and communities. None of these factors, sleep, exercise, diet, stress management, can stop aging outright, but they can slow its advance and compress the period of decline. They extend health span, keeping people vibrant into later years. In some ways, they are the most accessible form of rejuvenation science we have. Even as advanced therapies like senolytics and reprogramming remain experimental, the foundations of longevity are already available to anyone. They require no billion-dollar lab, no rare elixir, only daily choices that align with what the body has always needed: rest, movement, nourishment, and connection. And perhaps that is the quiet lesson. While we may dream of stopping aging entirely, the way we live today already shapes the pace of time within us. A good night's sleep, a walk in the morning sun, a shared meal with loved ones. These are small, everyday fountains of youth. When we speak of stopping aging, the focus is usually biological, on cells, DNA, and mitochondria. But there is also a deeper question to consider. If aging were halted, would it feel as though time itself had stopped? For most of us, the passage of time is measured through change. Children grow, hair turns gray, joints stiffen, and memory shifts. These changes are the markers by which we sense years moving forward. Without them, the flow of time might feel unfamiliar. To look in the mirror over decades and see no difference could alter our very sense of life's rhythm. Philosophers since antiquity have explored this connection. Aristotle described time as the measure of change. Without change, he argued, time loses its meaning. From this perspective, aging is not just a biological process, but one of the most immediate ways we experience time. To stop aging would not literally halt the clock, but it would transform our perception of its passage. Human culture also relies on age as a framework. Milestones like turning 18, 40, or 100 give structure to our lives. They shape identity, create transitions, and mark the stages of existence. Without aging, such markers would fade. The concepts of childhood, middle age, or old age would lose their anchors, leaving life as a long continuum without natural chapters. Some might see this as freedom, time to pursue endless projects, new skills, or unbroken ambitions. Others might see it as flattening, years flowing without distinction, lacking the contrasts that make experiences stand out. Psychology adds another layer. Awareness of mortality often sharpens meaning. Knowing that life is limited pushes people to prioritize relationships, passions, and legacy. If time felt unlimited, urgency might diminish. Decisions could be postponed indefinitely, and the drive to act might weaken. This does not mean that life without aging would lack purpose. Humans create meaning in countless ways, but it suggests that halting aging would not only transform biology, it would reshape our experience of time itself. Calendars and clocks would continue, but the way we felt the years might be profoundly different. So when we consider whether humans could ever stop aging, we can also ask, what would it mean to live in a world where time no longer leaves its mark on our bodies? The answer is not that time would stop, but that our relationship with it would change in ways we can only begin to imagine. Looking across the science of aging, one truth stands out. Progress is being made, but the journey is long. Each discovery about telomeres, mitochondria, senescent cells, or reprogramming opens possibilities, yet also new questions. To ask about the future of aging research is to look into a horizon where biology, technology, and philosophy meet. Today, most research focuses on the hallmarks of aging, the cellular and molecular processes that drive decline. By mapping them out, scientists hope to target each one with precision. Some projects focus on senolytic drugs to clear zombie-like cells. Others develop molecules to stabilize proteins or enhance autophagy, the recycling system of cells. Gene therapies are being designed to repair DNA or lengthen telomeres in specific tissues. Each approach is a piece of the puzzle. Large organizations are emerging to coordinate this effort. Companies like Calico and Altos Labs, backed by billions of dollars, aim to turn aging research into practical therapies. Nonprofits and academic labs worldwide contribute to the same goal, often collaborating across disciplines. Aging is no longer a fringe topic. It is now a major scientific frontier. The near future may bring the first anti-aging therapies approved for humans. Senolytics, for example, are already in early clinical trials for diseases linked to senescent cells. such as arthritis and lung fibrosis. If successful, they could be expanded to broader applications, slowing aging-related decline across many systems. Other drugs, like rapamycin and metformin, are being tested for their potential to mimic the effects of calorie restriction. If they prove effective and safe, they may become widely available as longevity treatments. Cellular reprogramming remains riskier, but progress is steady, and some scientists envision it becoming a clinical tool within a few decades. Stem cell therapies are also advancing. Already, experimental treatments are exploring how to restore bone marrow, repair damaged hearts, or replace lost neurons. In time, these methods may combine with reprogramming, producing cells and tissues that are not just functional, but youthful. Still, there are many challenges. Biology is complex, and interventions that work in animals often fail in humans. Even when therapies succeed, they may come with trade-offs, like the risk of cancer in reprogramming. Ensuring safety will be essential. There are also social and ethical questions. If aging could be slowed significantly, who would have access? Would treatments deepen inequalities if only the wealthy could afford them? How would societies adapt if lifespans stretched far longer? These questions will shape not just medicine, but culture and law. It is unlikely that aging will be cured all at once. More plausibly, progress will come step by step, with treatments that add a few healthy years here, a few there. Over decades, these gains could accumulate, gradually extending both health span and lifespan. Already, lifespans have doubled in the past century, thanks to better medicine, sanitation, and nutrition. The next century may bring another transformation, driven by deeper knowledge of biology itself. Some dream of radical longevity, living not just to 100 or 120, but to 200, 500, or beyond. Others imagine rejuvenation as periodic maintenance, like tuning an engine, to keep bodies youthful indefinitely. Whether these visions are realistic remains uncertain, but the fact that they are discussed at all shows how far the conversation has shifted. Aging is no longer taken as untouchable. It is a frontier to be explored. And perhaps the most important lesson is that the journey itself matters. Even if humans never fully stop aging, the research brings benefits along the way. Treatments developed for aging often help with specific diseases: heart disease, cancer, dementia. In this sense, the search for longevity improves health broadly, even if immortality remains out of reach. The future of aging research will likely be a blend of biology, technology, and philosophy. Scientists will push deeper into molecular pathways. Engineers may design devices to monitor and support aging bodies. Ethicists and philosophers will continue to ask what it means to live longer, and whether more years always mean better lives. So where do we go from here? The answer is both humble and vast. We continue with small experiments in cells and animals. We test therapies step by step in humans. We ask questions about meaning and fairness. And all the while, we hold on to the wonder that aging, so familiar yet so mysterious, may one day bend to human understanding. We began tonight with a question that has lingered in human imagination for centuries. Could humans ever stop aging? We have wandered through cells and stories, through telomeres and tortoises, through myths of fountains and alchemists, through modern laboratories and the quiet lessons of long-lived people. Each path has given us a glimpse of the mystery. Science tells us that aging is not a single process, but many. Telomeres shortening, mitochondria faltering, proteins misfolding, senescent cells accumulating, the immune system drifting, Each is a thread in the fabric of decline. Myths tell us that the longing to escape time is as old as humanity itself. Philosophers remind us that mortality gives life shape and meaning. Together, they suggest that aging is not only biology, but also story and perspective. Could we ever stop it? The answer, for now, is uncertain. Nature shows us creatures like hydras and jellyfish that escape decline. Families of supercentenarians show us that the human body can stretch far beyond the average. Scientists experimenting with senolytics, reprogramming, and lifestyle interventions show us that it may be possible to bend the curve of aging, if not halt it entirely. The dream is not yet realized, but it is no longer only a dream. And yet, even as science advances, the question remains: what would it mean to live without aging? Would time feel endless, or would it feel changed, emptied of the markers that now give it texture? Would we treasure moments less, or would we find new ways to shape meaning without decline? These are not questions with simple answers, but they are part of the same wonder that drives us to look into cells and stars alike. So as this journey comes to a close, we return to where we began. Aging is at once familiar and mysterious. It is written into our cells, but also into our stories. Whether it is one day slowed, softened, or even paused, it will always remind us of life's rhythm, its beginnings, its middles, and its endings. For tonight, the question does not need a final answer. It is enough to rest in the wonder of it, to feel curiosity without urgency, to let imagination wander as the body grows still. The science continues, the stories endure, and time flows on. As you drift towards sleep, you can set the question down. Could humans ever stop aging? Perhaps, perhaps not. What matters in this moment is that you are here, alive in your own time, breathing, resting, carried by the quiet mystery of life itself.